Okay,
You're live.
I'm happy to sign. So this is Senate Transportation, and we're back live with the Rails Trails budget, and you could give us your name and.
Of course, thank you. For the record, I'm Jackie Casino. I am the Agency of Transportation's Rail Trails Program Manager. Quick refresher, the agency is responsible for 145 miles of rail bank trails across the state. This is inclusive of 4 trails, the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail being the longest in the state and the longest in New England, but we also have the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail, the Beebe Spur Rail Trail, as well as the Delaware and Hudson Rail Trail. These trails run through 31 towns across the state of Vermont. We cover 27 trailheads, 90 bridges, and 738 culverts. And rail trail use is diverse and growing, I'm happy to say. We're averaging around 30 events annually that can draw in hundreds of visitors to these towns. We have permanent counters along all 4 trails, and although trail user volume varies, just looking at some of the daily trip counts, the LVRT in Morristown is averages around 200 daily, around 75,000 annually in terms of trips. The Beebe Spur, for example, in Newport typically averages around 160 trips daily and up to 10,000 trips on an annual basis. So there's certainly some busy areas along our trails. We have various businesses operating along our trails, across our trails and adjacent to our trails. We, at this time, have 461 individual businesses that are registered with our Trail Friendly Business Program. We completed annual user survey. This year we had around 431 trail users completed that survey, and that's an area where we can dive into and get some additional information in terms of spending profile information, origin and destination, things like that. And I think it's always important to hit on that the economic impact of these trails cannot be overstated. They're a key accessible component of Vermont's outdoor recreation network, and they provide a key contribution to state tourism. So they directly contribute to local economic activity through lodging, purchasing of food, fuel, and gear. And just for a snapshot in time, the Northeastern Vermont Development Association in 2023 released an economic impact study just on the LVRT in Caledonia County, and that projected $4.7 million in annual sales associated with the trail and the creation of up to 75 jobs in that region.
Go ahead.
Is back on the last slide.
Sure.
Of the 145 miles managed, are they all banked?
They are either through state or federal process.
Okay. And so the 12 that are banked, but not, are those trails or?
They are trails. They are. So, and they are trails that either the Agency of Transportation has an agreement with the municipality to manage. An example of that would be the Bennington Rail Trail, or the state has an agreement, for example, with Forest Parks and Rec for the Colchester Causeway, and that line is rail banked as well.
And when it's banked, that means it's possible that it could switch out.
Correct. We are essentially, the state of Vermont is acting as a trail sponsor holding that line in perpetuity. And right now that they are primarily used for recreational use, but if a train or a company was to come back and it was deemed up highest and best economic value for that train to run, and for that line to be reinstated, then that's how that process would work.
And is the state opposed to operating or managing rail trails that are on rails that have been thrown up?
That's an interesting question. And I have to check in with folks above me and ask that. I'm not sure at this time. Typically, excuse me, for the trails we manage, they are trails that, the land is owned by the state, right? So it's in our hopper. Right? It's a great question. I can get to too.
Okay.
Okay, sure. Looking at how this program functions within the agency and key folks outside of the agency, we're a team of 4 staff and we cover 145 miles across the state. We do have the opportunity to hire typically up to 2 additional field staff during our peak field season, which is summer through fall. And then we are very fortunate to partner with organizations like VAST or the Memphremagog Trails Group to groom our trails during the winter. That's not something we do. That's a service they provide. We have agreements with them that stipulates how and when they can do that, and that ensures accessibility for trail users year round. We're also very fortunate to partner with our regional planning commissions. So we have contracts through the agency's TPI program on an annual basis to develop a work plan with them. And, that enables us to have their assistance on a variety of tasks that we just don't have capacity to undertake. So for one example of those, 738 culverts, that was my staff and RPC staff last year that were doing that work, right? Additionally, a critical component of what the regional planning commissions do is to help stand up these rail trail councils. So there's a rail trail council for every rail trail that the agency is in charge of. And the primary functions of these councils are to really support engagement with our trail towns, to coordinate volunteers and local initiatives, to assist in trail promotion and outreach, to encourage educational programming, provide eyes and ears on the trail through its membership. And another key charge of these rail trail councils is to ensure the implementation of their trail management plan. So we are required to have a management plan for each of these 4 trails based on our federal funding source. And that is something that really acts as a roadmap for not only for the agency, but for the rail trail councils over the next 3 to 5 year time frame. Switching gears and looking at our priorities over the next year, the program, as you all know, is still relatively new to the agency, having been established in 2022. Our focus over the last 3 years has really been emergency response and recovery, as well as establishing programmatic foundations. It's been a bit like driving a bus while putting the wheels on. And our program goal is to continue to work towards right-sizing our program, to developing our appropriate systems, and to manage these assets. Upcoming year priorities include asset management and integration into the agency system. We are just wrapping up management plans for the last 3 trails to work on completing what I call our special funded projects that were funded primarily through a one-time source of funds, whether it was an earmark or carbon reduction program funds or the transportation fund, to continue to work to wrap up our emergency projects and a variety of other things that have been identified as priorities by the rail trail councils. Looking at our proposed 2027 budget, the major buckets for us include operations and maintenance, capital projects, and staffing. And just diving a little bit into what that means for the rail trail program under operations and management, that really includes small scale projects, whether it is end-to-end mowing, heavy brush cutbacks, small culvert replacement, bridge redecking, those sort of things. Anything that, in terms of emergency recovery that's not covered by FEMA. It also includes equipment maintenance and purchasing, trail monitoring, enforcement. So we do partner with our game wardens when there are enforcement issues along the trails, continuing asset inventory and inspection. And then we are also responsible for the marketing and promotion of these trails. So we do have a marketing budget for that.
I can't remember, we talked about this last year, I think it was last year, what's allowed on the rail trail. I can't remember hunting, talk about hunting and fishing. They are allowed or they're not allowed?
Yes, so you can hunt and fish from the trail and use the trail as a sort of like a corridor to get to land to do those activities, but not permitted on like the 10-foot core of the trail itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we did have some changes about distancing from all trails with traps a few years ago.
Right.
That we spent a significant,
So,
and then
right.
rail trails.
Yes.
You had to have a certain.
Exactly. And we only trap for nuisance animals. And it's something that we do partner with the wildlife biologists within Fish and Wildlife and really look at a variety of treatments that we can undertake first before going to trapping. So we've had a lot of success with things like fever baffles. So when we can do that, that's obviously our preferred method.
So it's just, I think we do that a year or 2 ago.
Yeah, because I remember having a lot of talk about, there was something weird about the fishing part or something with the.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna ask is,
I was in
Fishing.
natural resources, so at some point when we did a bunch of traffic
So
changes.
was it traffic? It was about.
It was
fishing.
about fishing that we
Hmm.
did something slightly different than.
Maybe it was just the wording was weird, you know,
Yeah.
the way they talked about it.
I think we had it included and then it was recommended to get pulled out from the statutory changes because fishing and hunting and trapping are in another part of state statute. I have to go back and.
So if you step 2 feet off the trail,
Mm.
you can hunt, but if you're like standing on the trail, you.
Right, you cannot like discharge a weapon, right,
You-
while you're standing on the
Yeah,
trail.
or if you're like on a trail bridge, you can't fish off that.
Oh,
You could go around the edge of the river.
Oh, that's a really nuanced question. I
I
have
think
not
that's why they
into.
did it.
Yeah, I think that's why the
Because people
fishing
were
is.
standing on the.
Right.
and stuff.
So that is a permitted use. That's, be able to fish on the trail. So I
It
can
is.
go back and double check the
Yeah,
exact
that-
language. I
But
apologize.
there are a
Mhm.
bunch of bridges
Right.
across the Lamoille that are,
Exactly.
you know, and you're on that and
Mhm.
We
And what-
actually did some for ATVs too at one time, where you could
Alongside, right?
travel a little bit to get
Oh.
to another trail or something.
Yeah, so we do have crossings,
Yeah.
typically the private crossings, for farm use or residential use and vehicular use is allowed to cross. Typically don't permit, motor vehicles to go up the trail. That's certainly, we're happy to work with VASA and others if there's ever a need for additional trail crossings, to connect to their trails. It's, very similar to what we would do with VAS. And we're continuing to work with community groups or organizations like the Northern Forest Canoe Trail in Lamoille County in particular, who they are interested in additional fishing access spots along the LVRT and then potentially the MVRT in Franklin County. So lots of where we can, co-locate these sort of programmatic uses. That's certainly what we're trying to do. All right, getting back to the budget, capital projects, I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next slide, and that can obviously vary every year, just depending on the projects that we have on deck. And then staffing costs are reflected here as well. So the majority of our programmatic funding derives from federal funding sources with the 80% federal contribution. And funding to support our activities has historically come from 4 primary sources: surface transportation block grant funds at 80%. We've been very fortunate to be a recipient of some congressional direct spend funds or earmarks at 80%. And then the carbon reduction program for projects that are eligible. So for example, the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail this year should begin construction on an extension project from its current westernmost terminus in St. Albans, and will go further into the downtown of St. Albans, and mirroring really what the city is invested in to increase shared use path and bike ped facilities from the downtown. So if you think about it, that trail is 26 miles, and trail users will have the opportunity to go from Richford all the way into downtown St. Albans. Our planned 2027 projects are on this slide. And they include a number of projects that are funded via other funding sources, such as earmarks, carbon reduction program. And again, we've been really fortunate to have access to these funds for the building out of the trail system. And, again, moving towards more of an asset management lens for these trails, it's really critical for us to continue to think about sustainable sources of funding moving forward. So the first block of projects on this slide highlight projects that were primarily funded through earmark funds, and they include trailhead improvements. The second tier there looks at the St. Albans Extension Project, which I just spoke about. And then the third tier is looking at a number of community facilities, trailheads that were funded through the one-time appropriation of transportation funds. And a lot of these went out through a community grant program over the last 3 years.
is there some place I can get some detail on these projects?
Definitely, I'm happy to provide that.
oh, and it's in the book, I think.
It is, and I'm
No,
happy to
it's-
provide, yeah, I think
It's not.
It's really.
Because it's pretty bare minimum. Yeah, I'm happy to provide.
There's
some
one
of those.
page here now in,
Oh, okay.
there are a few projects in the county.
Definitely, yeah. And so we've been very fortunate for a
Yeah.
number of our
Feel a little left out now.
The chair.
There's a break with
chair
that
might
one.
wanna write an article to his local paper about.
Windsor County has a lot of stuff that could be,
Right. Yeah.
If that could be rail trail.
be rail trail. We could bank some things.
River
Well,
Trail.
you gotta start banking.
Yeah,
They still have tracks, but they're.
we've got one, well, there's one that runs, I don't know.
The
There's
West
a
River
one-
Trail.
Yeah,
Is pretty popular. It's managed by a nonprofit. It's
And
former railbed. I don't
it's
think it's
spring-
all railbay.
yeah,
It's Emma.
Springfield,
Probably not
they
bad.
The
were,
tuna
I
fish
don't know
trail,
if they
tuna
still have the
trail, right?
tracks.
But if I could get
Of course,
detail, Hyde Park, local.
definitely.
It would be.
Yeah, and we anticipate all of these projects will be completed by the end of 2027, which is really exciting. One of the projects that the Rail Trail Council is very excited about, as well as our historic preservation office, is the building out of an accessible path to the Fisher Covered Bridge in Wolcott, which is the last remaining historic rail bridge in the state. It's one of 8 left in the country, so it's really exciting. And right now, it's really segmented. There's a great parking area. You can't actually get up the trail
It's a
to the
beautiful
bridge
bridge.
itself. Yeah, so that's out to bid right now, and it should be completed by June. So it's exciting. And that was it for my slides, but I'm happy to take any questions, folks.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I guess I just want to comment that I'm really grateful for the work that you do. The rail trails have been just such a success, I think, over the last few years. It's been incredible to see the partnership and the outdoor recreation that's been motivated by it. And I know during COVID, there was this, I think, people were flooding the rail trails.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that, although perhaps participation or use of that has started to stabilize, it's still growing over time.
Yes.
So we're still seeing interest. So yeah, well, I'll ask one question. So the VAST
Yes.
network,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the snowmobilers, how does this relate? Because there was some debates at one point a few years
Sure.
ago about usage.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that? Folks have to pay, they have to get there. We just in time to increase the fees. You have to get your VAST network pass.
Mhm.
And then can you go on any of how do your trails overlap?
Sure. Yes. So we have a master license agreement with VAST.
Okay.
For 3 out of our 4 trails. So at each trail except for the BB Spur.
Mm.
For the BB Spur, we have a master license agreement with Memphremagog Trails, which they own a pretty extensive network right adjacent to the BB, but also you utilize the BB as well. Anyway, so those stipulate when they can be on the trail, when they can groom, how communication works, how postseason, we complete a asset inventory, see the impact primarily to the bridge decks.
Yeah.
And how that works is we, before the VAST season, we communicate with the local clubs. And then, during they're allowed to be on the trail and put up their signs about a month ahead of their season start. And typically each of our rail trail councils has at least one VAST member on it to continue that line of communication. And then we're just really fortunate that between the Memphremagog Trails Club and VAST, they groom these trails so they're accessible. I mean, they are ADA accessible trails. So that's part of the state's ADA outdoor rec network. And we would not be able to meet compliance if we didn't have them groomed by these clubs during the winter. So in general, it's worked really well. If there's, it is very rare, if ever, that I receive complaints. We do have lower speed limits often set in our downtowns and villages when communities ask for that. The same thing for the BB Spur. That is not used as a feeder trail or a quarter trail. It's the VAST trail network goes across that trail to continue onto their larger network. And there's a handful of residents that have access to get back to their homes. So it's a handful of sleds that might go up there. And then, again, if there's ever any concerns or complaints that we would receive during the winter, we would reach out to VAST. They do have a safety committee. They work with law enforcement to go out and patrol areas if there's repeat issues. But in general,
Well, it's a great
worked
partnership.
very well.
I think it's actually quite a really,
Mhm.
it's quite tremendous. So thank you for all that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you all.
Oh. Wow,
The last item on our agenda, this was my pitch.
we already, it's the last item. Did I miss something? Only time?
I told them, are you
Right, we're, I
You
thought
ready
it
to
was,
go off?
yes, please.